Talk to us about the success and how it's been received. It was one of the favourites on Prime Video of last year, so talk to us a bit about how that's all been received. Who would like to go first on this? David?
Sure. It's been a whirlwind adventure for me. I mean, this is my first show on the air, and to see it go out worldwide, all the messages we came out, and we were getting fans writing in from South Korea, from Germany, from Poland, from Brazil. It was sort of a real great adventure, and to see how it was picked up across the world, it was great.
Was it received well in Scotland as well, with all of the sort of Scottish setting of representation?
Yeah, it was, yeah, and that was one of the key things when we came to make the show. You might be able to tell I am from Scotland, and I was very clear that we wanted to make this show in Scotland. Scottish cast, Scottish crew, and show what we could do up there.
I mean, you really did do a good job with doing that as well. What about you guys as well in the cast when it came to the way season 1 was received and how your experience was while you were filming it?
We were blown away with it. The first time when I spoke to John about doing the job, me and John had worked together a few times previous, and the word he kept using was ambition. And it was great to work on a job in Scotland that had that sort of scale. And yeah, we were really blown away with how it went down. And, being Scottish, because there was that kind of thing that used to happen. People would film their exteriors in Scotland and then piss off down south to a studio. And so it was lovely that you had something that big that was all filmed in Edinburgh, at Pride. They've really invested in Edinburgh. It's been great. So yeah, it's been an absolute joy to be part of it.
Now, how much of it was filmed on a real oil rig? How much was CG? How much was studios? Talk to us about the balance.
Well, we did most of it in studios, because I think that getting a load of actors out onto a real rig or a decommissioned rig was a bit of
Healthy safety nightmare.
Yeah, and I don't think that you're allowed to have a bar on a rig, so that works hand in hand with actors. But yeah, no, most of it was studio work and CGI.
Talk to us about why you set something on an oil rig. I'm assuming it's to do with the fact that it's thalassophobia and it's isolatory. It lends itself to a really particular setting.
Yeah, well, the original idea, it was, I like to say, it was all my dad's fault, essentially, because my dad, all the time when I was growing up, he worked offshore on oil rigs like this, and where I grew up in Scotland, that's where they used to build them. You could literally see them from my house, kind of towering over the town. So, and then the other thing was, we're big sci-fi fans in my house, and I really wanted to do a show. It was my kind of attempt at doing a John Carpenter or a James Cameron, using that setting, very isolated, extreme environment, and that real scale, big adventure. That's what we wanted to do.
You obviously picked a very big part of it, and it's sort of a massive analogy for sort of capitalism and kind of corporate greed and things. And it's interesting the way that you guys display that. But I'm wondering how you guys go about doing something like that in the show without it seeming sort of too on the nose or maybe cartoonishly evil, how you approach writing sort of that evil megacorp. Like, how do you go about that and then performing around that as well?
Evil megacorp. But the useful thing about oil companies is that it's quite easy to find evil things that they might have done in real life. And, I was always very clear when I wrote the show. My sort of approach was, there's a great difference between people who run oil companies and people who work on oil rigs. These are very different people. And what we wanted to do is to show both sides of that. You've got the corporate power and the maleficence that they bring, but also the men and women who actually work there. These are people out there doing a very hard job, sacrificing a lot. They're away from their families a lot, as my dad was, and it's dangerous work, and we wanted to show the dignity in that as well, while having our evil company tools.
Did you guys have to speak to any oil rig workers, or maybe have family who've done this, who you got to understand exactly what that was like?
Yeah, we did. There was a lot of research thrown at us before we started shooting. It was great. I had a guy who did basically my role, who came on set, and I went through every kind of aspect of the script with him, and we had lots of kind of research documentaries that we watched, and I mean, that's the thing, particularly if you are shooting in the studio, kind of you really want to kind of bed it in the reality of the world in which you're living in. So you kind of go overboard in your research to make sure you know where you are and what the elements are you're dealing with. So yeah.
And Iain, since we're talking to you, I'll ask about this, because you share the screen with not one, but two other Game of Thrones stars in this. What was it like acting with them? Because I don't think you had screen time with them at Game of Thrones.
No, I didn't.
And now you're in a modern setting.
Exactly. Well, Mark Addy, we were at drama school together.
Goodness.
Yeah, we were at Rada. And he was a year older than me, so I kind of knew him then. He was Mark's great, and he's a great asset to the show. I think he's such a strong actor, and he features heavily in the second season as well.
No, it's lovely when you bump into people further down the line for shows that you've done before. It's great. So yeah, all good.
Because Owen as well. Oh yeah, he's very similar role to what he plays in Game of Thrones. It's sort of the thing pushing against Magnus through a lot of it until near the end of season 1, where sort of reconcile their differences.
That's right. Well, Owen again, he's a real heavyweight, and he's a great mate as well. We had fun while we were doing this, and Owen is quite rock and roll. He's irrepressible. So many stories that I can't share with you off the set. But no, he's a wonderful actor, and he brings a great truth to his role.
John, let's talk about the sort of difference in setting between the season 1. Season 1 is obviously on Kinloch Bravo the entire time, but in season 2 it's moved to a new location.
Yes, it's as you see, the new location is the Arctic, and as part of the research for this show, we went to the Arctic. We went to Svalbard, which is a town in a group of islands north of Norway. Then we got on a small ship, spent 5 days, 4 nights, going in and out of different fjords until we found the perfect location for what would be our frozen sea. So everything you see in the show, in the season, is it's based on a real fjord called St. John's Fjord. I didn't choose it for that reason. And it is exact, so that we built that into computers so that we could predict where the sun matches exactly what it did in real life. So everything is true to life. And the reason that season 1, I think, was so popular was because it felt so authentic. And we say that in season 1, 90% was science fact and 10% was science fiction. And I think in season 2, we're probably 75% science fact and 35%, 20% science fiction. But it has an authority, season 1, and season 2 does too. And if you don't believe the environments they're in, then the show doesn't have legs.
Was it always planned to be on a grander scale for season 2, especially if, like you say, you've got to sort of move it about if you're just setting it on a rig for the first season? Were you always thinking of expanding it?
Well, I mean, basically, I think in season 1, the ancestor came to us. In season 2, you have to go out to it, because that's the where the story is.
Yeah, well, I really wanted to take us to some extreme environments, and the two on my list it's the Arctic. That's something I've always been very interested in, all the stories of exploration and things like that. But that was one area that I wanted to go to, and under the sea as well. I think it's just such unexplored part of our world. I was doing a lot of research on that, and also harking back to stuff like the Abyss. I'm a big James Cameron fan, and he gets to go there himself now in his submarine and stuff. But it was always an ambition to do something where we used that undersea environment. And it was very weird when we were shooting our undersea sequences. That whole thing with that submarine at the Titanic was going on literally that week, and it was very spooky and really brought home the danger of what's down.
Just say, I think it's one of the brilliant things that David's done. Like when you got to the end of season 1, I just couldn't really perceive, whereas I'm an actor, not a writer, where the story could sort of go from here. There was a huge question mark left at the end of it, of where we're kind of end up in this helicopter, and we're going, we know not where. But the story that he spun is so really scarily plausible
for one. And the Arctic is valid because, there is a lot of activity going on currently in the Arctic to do with trying to find different energies, whether it's through minerals, rare metals. It's being plowed just now. And so that's one of the main reasons that we end up there, and also the ocean bed. So it organically, the moment I started reading the script, I thought, of course, that's where they are. And of course, that's what they're going on. And you go from a world in which all of us were familiar with our world on the rig, on the North Sea, in Scotland. And then all these unfamiliar things happened to us, bombarded us, that we had to deal with. What's fantastic about the second season, I think, is that you don't need to establish us anymore. You don't need to establish the characters. We're now in an unfamiliar world, and unfamiliar things are happening as well. So it's kind of, I feel there's a kind of momentum from the off-go, which is great, the second season. I hope you find that.
Running. You had quite a few intense seas in season 1. Can we expect more of that from you in season 2?
Yeah, this is China where he's such a big help to me, because I'm like, the intense stuff comes easy to me, but all the sort of earthquakey, shaky, radar darling, I get really self-conscious with all that stuff where you have to hand act and all that stuff. Like, Iain absolutely thrives on it. And his enthusiasm is a total tart to the odd. Well, the stuff that I find that quite difficult, being with him out in that ice, you'd used to sort of take his lean. But the one thing I will say about it from Stecker Up, the special effects are incredible this year. They really are. And there's so many horrors or sci-fis you see, and it's great until you see it, or the big reveal happens, and it kind of then fades. The crescendo of this in episode 6 is stunning. It really is. It deserves to be on a big screen. So I mean, that's what all these guys have done, both in visualizing all this stuff. But yeah, you won't be disappointed. I found it really emotional. Actually, got to the end of 6. I really did.
Sure. Really? How did it feel for you being Kat, having to go through quite a difficult phase for season 2? Is it quite almost emotionally tough to be on Kat?
And that's the joy of being an actor. I mean, going through those journeys and being able to play that emotion and being able to have an emotional arc, that's the joy of what we do. That's what we kind of chase. So being able to be gifted with such a beautiful storyline is a joy and an honour.
Well, now part of the main story that we've got this, obviously Picta, the evil corporation we referred to earlier, quite a cold sort of company, but Alice, we haven't spoken to you yet. But obviously you come in as part of Picta. You're the CEO, the boss of bosses. And you come across early on the season, at least from what I've seen, as a more human side of it, which is something that I think people must consider quite rare from all the cruel experience through what seem like very cold decisions made by sort of robotic corporate types. But you come in as sort of a more human element of it initially. So if you tell us a little bit about your role within season 2.
It's a testament to David's writing, actually, because it's a huge story. I mean, there's nothing more important on the planet at the moment than this, in my opinion. If we destroy the last pristine part of the planet, and that's what we're looking at with this kind of mining. And the character has a wonderful moment towards the end where she says, this is like an unstoppable engine. But she has tried to work around and through the engine, and she makes some great errors of judgment with kind of tragic consequences. But at the end, well, how much of this do I give away? I don't know. Nothing. I can't give anything away. It's just very, very complex writing about a person caught in forces that are way beyond her control, but passionately striving to do the right thing,
And how was your experience on set and things playing this character? Was it quite intense? Was it quite fun?
I was terrified most of the time, but as Rochenda has said, it's such a loving, welcoming group of actors. In fact, everyone was. It's often very difficult to come in a second season when the group has already been established and there's a shorthand and a language. And everyone was incredibly welcoming.
You tell us a bit about where Magnus is through season 2.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I think he struggles to keep up in a way. It was one of the, it was a hard thing to play because you're kind of, in the first season, as I say, he was very familiar with the world and the tools that he had at his disposal to try and cope with all these variables that were being thrown at him. And the second, he's kind of like, he's not in his element. He's not in his home. He's in this kind of bizarre, new, hyper kind of cutting edge, what we call the stack within it, which is very high tech. And it's up to different things than an all rig and an all sea. So he's unfamiliar. And I think, he kind of slightly goes into a default setting of just not wanting anyone to get hurt, not to lose life. So it was interesting. I found it quite tricky at sometimes to play. Kind of, it wasn't as clear a route. Magnus was quite clear, haunted by his past, which was catching up with him in the first season, and in the second season, he was a bit like a fish out of water. Didn't quite know how to do and how to make the most of his qualities, how to lead, when he didn't know where he was leading. So it was it was good. It's a good challenge. You're telling me, just to reiterate what Alice was saying, it does feel, without being too earnest, it does feel like no more important topic in the world than what are we doing to this planet and are we fucking it up? Whatever you may think about it, whether you think it's overstated or whether it's understated, it has to be the most important thing. Are humans, are we making a mess of the world that we were brought into? And I suspect most of us think that we are. This drama deals in this. It deals in it, and it deals with kind of an insight and a knowledge that David has about the subject matter, without bombarding you, without being didactic. It tells a very, very thrilling. I think it's a piece of entertainment, but you glean a little bit along the way, I think, about it. It makes you think about these things. But at the end of the day, it's an entertaining thriller with supernatural elements in it. But I think one of the reasons it did as well as it did is because it's just the good combination of good character, good plot, and a story that's worth telling.
Well, I mean, my big aim, which we kind of touched on the series 2, was, series 1 is very contained, where we stay on our rig, the Bravo, almost the whole time. And what I really wanted to do in series 2 is really expand the world. So, we go a lot of different places. The scale is much bigger, and also, one thing that was really important to me, which comes into Rochenda's storyline and Alice's, is to see the consequences of devastation. For those who have seen Series 1, you know how it ends. There's a big disaster at the end. And, we see a lot of these in Phil Tarday's cities being destroyed and sort of complete chaos. But I really wanted to show, okay, and what happens after that? What happens to the people on the ground? We see today so many videos of terrible natural disasters all around the world, and what happens when that's your city, your home that gets hit, and how does that affect people? That's what I really wanted to capture.